My name is Claire Bennett. And before that day, my life looked ordinary from the outside.
I was 38 years old. I worked part-time as an interior designer, mostly from home so I could raise Lily and Noah. Derek owned a small commercial real estate company called Bennett Urban Properties. We lived in a comfortable suburb outside Chicago, attended school events, hosted summer barbecues, and smiled in family photographs. People called us lucky. What they did not see was how carefully Derek controlled our life. He handled every bank account. He chose which clients I could accept. He complained if I spent too much time with friends. Whenever I questioned him, he said I was emotional, forgetful, or bad with money. For years, I believed him. My uncle, Arthur Vale, was the only person who never did. Arthur was my mother's older brother. He had no children, never married, and spent most of his life building a real estate company in New York. He was demanding, private, and sometimes difficult. But he was also the first adult who treated my opinions seriously. When I was 16, he taught me how to read a building plan. When I was 21, he offered to pay for business school. I chose design instead, and he told me, a strong building needs vision as much as steel. Derek disliked him from the beginning. Arthur saw through charm, the way a doctor sees, through an X-ray. At my wedding, he shook Derek's hand and said, "If you ever make my niece smaller, so you can feel bigger, I'll know." Derek laughed. Arthur did not. 3 months before my inheritance, Arthur died from a heart attack at 74. Derek acted more upset than I expected. He attended the funeral, carried my suitcase, and kept asking whether Arthur had left a will. I thought he was worried about me. Now I knew he had been counting money before Arthur was even buried. The lawyer who called me was named Miriam Roth. Her voice was calm and precise. "Mrs. Bennett, your uncle left instructions that the details of his estate could only be discussed with you in person." When I arrived at her Chicago office, she locked the conference room door before opening a thick blue folder. Arthur had left me $24 million in cash and investments. More important, he had left me the Vale Tower, a Manhattan office building valued at nearly $180 million. I could barely breathe. "There are conditions," Miriam said. That brought me back to earth. For the first 12 months, I could not sell the building. I had to chair its board and personally approve any transfer of ownership, refinancing agreement, or change in management. Arthur had also created a trust for Lily and Noah. Derek could not touch it. I remember laughing through my tears. He thought of everything. Miriam did not smile. Your uncle tried to. She slid a small sealed envelope across the table. On the front, Arthur had written CLAIRE. Open onawa FIO ti adu ubatiau ura hesbian. My stomach tightened. I asked Miriam what it meant. She said she did not know. Arthur had ordered her not to discuss the envelope unless I chose to open it. I placed it inside my purse. Then I called Derek. He did not answer. I sent a message saying I had wonderful news and was coming home early. He read it, but he never replied. That should have warned me. Instead, I picked up the children from school and bought a chocolate cake. I imagined Derek lifting me off the floor. I imagined us paying every debt, traveling with the children, and beginning a new chapter. I did not know he had already written a different ending. After hearing him upstairs, I drove directly to my friend Rachel's apartment. Rachel Ortiz was a family law attorney. We had been friends since our first year of college, but Derek never liked her. He said she encouraged me to be suspicious. Now I understood why. Rachel opened the door, saw my face, and brought us inside without asking questions. She put on a movie for the children and led me into her kitchen. I told her everything. The inheritance, Vanessa's car, the conversation, The accident. Rachel's expression changed from shock to fear. Did they see you? I don't think so. Did you tell Derek about the inheritance? Only that I had good news? Good. Do not tell him anything else. My hands began to shake. Rachel took my phone and disabled location sharing. Then she checked the family tracking application Derek had insisted we install. My location had been shared with him every minute of every day. Rachel turned it off. Less than 30 seconds later, Derek called. I stared at his name on the screen. Answer it, Rachel said. Act normal. I pressed the button. Hey, I said. Where are you? He asked. No greeting. No apology for missing my call. Rachel's. I picked up the kids and stopped by. Why did your location disappear? I looked at Rachel. My battery is almost dead. There was a long silence. Then his voice softened. You said you had wonderful news. I forced a laugh. It can wait. Come home. Claire. The way he said my name made my skin turn cold. I'm tired. We might stay here tonight. His voice hardened again. Bring my children home. I almost corrected him. Our children. But Rachel shook her head. Tomorrow? I said. Good night. I ended the call before he could answer. For the first time in my marriage, I had disobeyed my husband. It felt terrifying. It also felt like waking up. Parte de duo. Tichi alapa that night, after Lily and Noah fell asleep, I opened Arthur's envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter and a flash drive. Claire. If you are reading this, Derek has finally given you a reason to question him. I am sorry I could not protect you without risking that you would defend him and turn away from me. 3 years ago, Derek approached my company through a hidden corporation called Northline Development. He wanted to buy Vale Tower for less than half its value. When I rejected the offer, he tried to obtain private financial records and tenant information through an employee he had bribed. I investigated him. What I found is on the enclosed drive. Do not confront him. Do not sign anything. Trust Miriam Roth and no one Derek introduces to you. Most of all, trust yourself. You were never weak. Someone simply profited from making you believe you were. Uncle Arthur, I read the letter twice. Then Rachel connected the flash drive to an old laptop that was not linked to any of my accounts. There were bank records, emails, voice recordings, and photographs. Arthur had discovered that Derek and Vanessa created Northline Development together. They had borrowed millions from private investors and promised them ownership of Vale Tower once Arthur died. But they could not control the building unless I signed it over. One email from Vanessa said, "The wife is easy. Derek has spent years building the medical history." I stopped reading. What medical history? Rachel asked. I knew immediately. 2 years earlier, Derek had convinced me to see a psychiatrist after I forgot a school appointment. I was tired because Noah had pneumonia. But Derek kept saying my memory problems were becoming dangerous. The psychiatrist, Dr. Alan Pike, diagnosed me with anxiety and prescribed medication. The pills made me dizzy and confused. Derek began documenting every mistake I made. He took videos when I was half awake. He emailed himself notes about my episodes. He told our neighbors I was struggling. At the time, I thought he was seeking support. In reality, he was building a case that I was mentally unfit. Rachel kept reading. Northline owed $12 million. A major payment was due in 6 weeks. If Derek could not deliver Vale Tower as promised, his investors could sue him for fraud. He did not just want my inheritance. He needed it. That made him more dangerous. At 2 a.m, a new email arrived in my inbox. It came from Derek. The subject line read, "Kawan CRMFR yo URSSFDY." He wrote that I had taken the children during an emotional episode and refused to return home. He said I had recently become confused, paranoid, and unstable. He copied Dr. Pike and someone named Thomas Weller. Rachel searched the name. Thomas Weller was a lawyer who specialized in emergency guardianship cases. The trap was already closing. If Derek convinced a judge that I was mentally incapable, he could ask to become my guardian. Then he could try to control the inheritance in my name. "We have to move fast," Rachel said. At 8 the next morning, we met Miriam at her office. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she made 2 phone calls. The first was to the board of Vale Tower. The second was to a former federal prosecutor named Daniel Cho. Daniel arrived before noon. He was in his early 50s, quiet and impossible to impress. He examined Arthur's files and said the evidence showed attempted corporate fraud, bribery, and conspiracy. But he warned us that some records were old, and Arthur had obtained a few of them through a private investigator. "We need evidence of what they are doing now," he said. "They talked about an accident," I replied. "Isn't that enough?" "You heard part of a conversation. They will deny it. If we accuse them too soon, they will destroy whatever they have." I hated his answer because I knew it was true. Miriam asked whether I could pretend I knew nothing. The thought of returning to Derek made me sick. Then I thought about Lily and Noah. If I ran without proof, Derek would use my fear against me. He would tell a judge I was unstable. He might even gain temporary custody. So I agreed to play the role he had written for me: the confused wife, the trusting wife, the woman who apologized even when she had done nothing wrong. Before I left, Daniel gave me a small recording device disguised as a pendant. Rachel arranged for the children to stay with her, explaining that we were having plumbing repairs at home. At 4 that afternoon, I drove back to my house alone. Derek was waiting in the kitchen. Vanessa's car was gone. He came toward me with his arms open. "Thank God," he said. "I've been worried." I let him hug me. His hand pressed against the back of my neck. For one terrible second, I wondered how much pressure it would take for him to kill me. Then he stepped away. "Where are the kids?" "With Rachel." I needed quiet. His eyes narrowed, but his smile remained. "Tell me your good news." I lowered my gaze and twisted my wedding ring. "It was a mistake." "What was?" "The lawyer called about Uncle Arthur's estate. I thought he left me something important, but there are debts and legal problems." I got confused. Derek studied my face. "What did he leave you?" "I'm not sure." "Did you sign anything?" "No." His disappointment was almost invisible. Almost. He poured me a glass of wine, although it was not yet 5. "You've been under so much stress," he said. "Dr. Pike warned me this could happen." He placed the glass in front of me. "I did not drink. Maybe I should see him," I said. Derek smiled. "I already made an appointment." Part. Tichachi, Tiechgami. Dr. Pike's office was on the 7th floor of a medical building near Lake Michigan. Derek insisted on coming inside. Pike greeted him more warmly than he greeted me. That told me everything. For 40 minutes, they discussed my mind as though I were not in the room. Derek said I had imagined an affair, taken the children without warning, and become obsessed with my uncle's estate. Pike asked whether I heard voices. I said no. He asked whether I believed people were planning to hurt me. I looked directly at Derek. Then I forced myself to smile. No, I think I was exhausted. Pike recommended a stronger medication and held out a prescription. I took it, knowing Daniel would have it tested. As we left, I saw Derek shake Pike's hand. A folded white envelope passed between them. The pendant recorded everything. Outside, Derek said, we needed to discuss Arthur's estate with a lawyer he trusted. "Thomas Weller?" I asked. He stopped walking. I pretended not to notice his surprise. "You copied him on your email," I explained. Right. Derek relaxed. Thomas will protect us. Ooze. That word had never sounded so dishonest. 2 days later, Weller came to our house with a leather folder and a sympathetic expression. He said the estate was complicated and could expose our family to tax problems. The safest option was for me to give Derek temporary financial authority. He placed a document in front of me. It was a broad power of attorney. It gave Derek control over nearly every asset I owned or might receive. I read slowly, pretending the legal language confused me. Can I show this to Miriam? Derek answered before Weller could. Miriam represents Arthur's estate, not you. But Uncle Arthur trusted her. Derek reached across the table and covered my hand. His touch looked loving. It felt like a warning. Claire, I am your husband. Trust me. I looked into the eyes of the man I had loved for 11 years. Behind him, on the bookshelf, stood our wedding photograph. I remembered how safe I had felt that day. I wondered whether any of it had been real. Then I began to cry. That part was not acting. I'm sorry, I whispered. I can't think. Weller suggested we wait until the following week. After he left, Derek slammed the folder onto the counter. Do you understand what is at risk? I flinched. He immediately softened his voice. I'm trying to protect you. I know. Then sign it. Tomorrow. He stared at me for several seconds. Tomorrow, he agreed. That night, I pretended to swallow one of Pike's new pills. Derek watched carefully, so I hid it beneath my tongue and spit it into the bathroom sink later. At midnight, he left our bedroom. I followed him quietly to the top of the stairs. He was speaking on the phone in his office. She almost signed, he said. Something is making her hesitate. Vanessa's voice came through the speaker. Then stop waiting. The guardianship hearing takes time. We don't have time. Halpern wants his payment in 10 days. Derek lowered his voice. Pike doubled the dose. Tomorrow night, I'll take her to the lake house. If she drinks wine with it, she won't know where she is. On my fingers closed around the pendant. Vanessa asked, and the car? The brake line is already damaged. I stopped breathing. Derek continued. The road curves above the ravine. They'll think she got confused, took the car, and lost control. What about the children? They'll inherit everything. As their father, I'll manage it. I had known he was dangerous. But hearing him discuss my death in a calm, practical voice destroyed the final piece of the man. I thought I married. I returned to bed before he came upstairs. I lay with my eyes closed while he climbed beneath the blanket and placed one arm around my waist. For years, that arm had made me feel protected. Now it felt like a chain. The next morning, I sent the recording to Daniel while Derek showered. Daniel called within minutes. Do not get into that car, he said. I told him I had another idea. At first, he refused. Then I reminded him that Derek and Vanessa still believed I knew nothing. If the police arrested Derek immediately, Vanessa might deny everything and blame him. The investors and the bribe doctor might escape. I wanted all of them exposed. Not because I was greedy. Not because I wanted revenge for the affair. I wanted every person who had helped turn my life into a cage to face what they had done. Daniel finally agreed to a controlled plan. The police would inspect the car, document the damaged brake line, and replace it. Officers would monitor the lake house. I would never be alone, even if Derek thought I was. It was dangerous. But living with Derek had already become dangerous. The following evening, he drove me to our lake house in Wisconsin. The sky was gray, and cold rain struck the windshield. Derek acted gentle. He played our wedding song. He talked about fresh starts. At the house, he lit a fire and opened a bottle of wine. To us, he said. I touched my glass to his. When he turned away, I poured the wine into a large plant. He gave me one of Pike's pills. I pretended to swallow it. Within 30 minutes, I began acting sleepy. Derek helped me to the sofa. My head rested against a cushion, and I watched him through half-closed eyes. He checked my pulse. Then he took my phone, opened my hand, and pressed my thumb to the screen. He sent a message to Rachel from my account. I need space. I'm driving alone for a while. Please don't call me. Then he went outside. When he returned, his coat was wet. Claire, he whispered. Wake up. I let my body go limp. He lifted me under the arms and dragged me toward the door. My heart hammered so violently I feared he could feel it. Before we reached the porch, headlights swept across the windows. Derek dropped me. Vanessa's red convertible stopped outside. She rushed through the door. Why is she still here? She's out. Help me. But Vanessa stared down at me. Then she kicked my leg. I did not move. You should have handled her years ago, she said. Derek's voice sharpened. And you should have kept Northline out of Arthur's investigation. Don't blame me. You're the one who married her. Because Arthur would never sell to me. Claire was the path to the building. The words cut deeper than I expected. I had spent 11 years wondering when Derek stopped loving me. Now I knew. He had never started. Vanessa grabbed my arms. Come on. We put her in the driver's seat. Push the car down the slope and go home. Derek caught her wrist. First, she signs. He pulled the power of attorney papers from his coat. Vanessa laughed. She's unconscious. Pike said a shaky signature helps our story. Derek placed a pen in my hand. That was the moment I opened my eyes. Then let's make sure the story is accurate, I said. Vanessa screamed. Derek stumbled backward. The front and rear doors burst open at the same time. Police officers entered with weapons raised. Hands where we can see them. Derek looked at the officers, then at me. For once, he had no speech prepared. Vanessa tried to run through the kitchen. An officer stopped her before she reached the back door. Daniel walked inside after both of them were handcuffed. Derek stared at my pendant. Understanding spread across his face. You recorded me. I stood slowly. No, Derek. I finally listened to you, apart tefruar. Tas kaba sech ara emasabahar. Ikaz maldi, I thought the arrest would end everything. It did not. It was only the point where the private betrayal became public. Police found the damaged brake line, the forged medical records, and several versions of a suicide note written in my name. On Derek's laptop, investigators discovered searches about fatal medication combinations and guardianship laws. Dr. Pike was arrested after financial records showed Derek had paid him more than $80,000 through a consulting company. Thomas Weller claimed he knew nothing about the murder plan, but emails proved he had prepared guardianship papers using medical statements he knew were false. Vanessa made a deal within 48 hours. She gave prosecutors access to Northline's accounts and blamed everything on Derek. Derek blamed Vanessa. Pike blamed both of them. Weller blamed his assistant. It amazed me how quickly people who had conspired together became strangers when prison appeared. But the biggest surprise was still waiting. 1 week after the arrests, Miriam asked me to come to her office. She placed another blue folder on the table. Arthur included a final condition in the trust, she said. I was not allowed to reveal it until someone attempted to obtain control of your inheritance through fraud, coercion, incapacity, or your death. I opened the folder. Arthur had anticipated Derek's plan with frightening accuracy. If anyone tried to seize the estate from me, all management contracts connected to that person would be canceled automatically. Any company that had invested based on an unauthorized promise of ownership would lose its claim. and a reserve fund would finance civil lawsuits against every participant. But there was more. Arthur had quietly purchased Northline's largest debt 6 months before he died. The $12 million payment Derek owed. The creditor was now my trust. Arthur had not only protected the building, he had handed me the rope Derek used to destroy himself. I could demand immediate payment from Northline. Since the company had no money, I could seize its assets through court. Those assets included Derek's business offices, 3 apartment buildings, Vanessa's vacation property, and the red convertible parked behind my garage on the day I learned the truth. Miriam asked what I wanted to do. For a moment, I imagined taking everything. Then I thought about Northline's employees, tenants, and smaller investors. Many of them had been deceived too. Revenge that crushed innocent people would make me more like Derek, not less. So I chose something more careful. We asked the court to place Northline into supervised restructuring. Honest employees kept their jobs. Tenants kept their homes. Defrauded investors received shares in the recovered properties. Derek and Vanessa lost every dollar of ownership. I kept one asset, the red convertible. I sold it and donated the money to a shelter for women escaping controlling partners. Rachel called that poetic. I called it useful. Meanwhile, Derek launched his final attack. From jail, he accused me of creating the entire situation to steal his company. His lawyer released old videos showing me confused after taking Pike's medication. Online strangers called me unstable, greedy, and cruel. For 2 days, I stayed in bed and read every comment. On the 3rd day, Lily came into my room. "Mom," she said, "why do you care what people who don't know you think?" I stared at my 10-year-old daughter. It was such a simple question. I had no good answer. So I got out of bed. Daniel arranged a press conference outside the courthouse. I did not discuss sealed evidence or attack Derek personally. I simply described what coercive control looked like. I spoke about money being hidden, friends being pushed away, medical care being weaponized, mistakes being collected as evidence, fear being renamed love. Then I said, I am not speaking because I inherited money. I am speaking because many women do not have money, lawyers, or an uncle who leaves them proof. If my story helps one person recognize the trap before it closes, then Derek does not get the final word. The public conversation changed after that. Women began sending letters. Some said my story helped them ask for help. Others described marriages that sounded painfully familiar. I read every message. Their courage did more to heal me than any headline. 6 months later, Derek's trial began. The prosecution played the recording from our bedroom, the phone call about the break line, and the conversation at the lake house. Dr. Pike testified in exchange for a reduced sentence. Vanessa did the same. Derek sat at the defense table in a dark suit, looking smaller than I remembered. When I took the stand, his attorney tried to make me angry. He asked whether I hated my husband. I hate what he did. I answered. You wanted revenge, didn't you? I considered the question. At first, yes. The attorney smiled as if I had handed him the case. Then I continued. But revenge is about making someone feel your pain. Justice is about making sure they cannot cause that pain again. I came here for justice. The smile disappeared. Derek refused to look at me until the prosecutor played the lake house recording. His own voice filled the courtroom. Because Arthur would never sell to me, Claire was the path to the building. That was when he finally turned. Our eyes met. He expected tears. I gave him none. The jury deliberated for 7 hours. They found Derek guilty of attempted murder, conspiracy, fraud, forgery, and unlawful surveillance. He received 38 years in prison. Vanessa received 11. Dr. Pike lost his medical license and received 6. Thomas Weller was disbarred and sentenced for fraud and conspiracy. When the judge finished, Derek asked to speak to me. Against Rachel's advice, I agreed. We met in a secure room beside the courtroom. A guard stood near the door. Derek's wrists were chained to his waist. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then he said, "Is any of it real to you?" I almost laughed at the cruelty of the question. "Our children are real," I said. "The life I tried to build was real. My love was real." He looked down. "I did love you in my way. Your way nearly killed me. Vanessa pushed everything too far." Even then, he could not accept responsibility. I stood to leave. "Claire, wait." I turned. His face changed. For the first time, I saw fear instead of control. "What will you tell Lily and Noah about me?" I thought carefully before answering. "The truth, when they are old enough. I will tell them their father made terrible choices. I will also tell them they are not responsible for those choices." "Will they visit me?" "That will be their decision someday. Not yours." He closed his eyes. I walked out before he opened them. Part Favi. Thbuildmgh Monim, a year after Arthur's death. I moved with Lily and Noah to New York. I did not move because I wanted to escape Chicago. I moved because I was ready to choose my own direction. Vale Tower stood on Madison Avenue, 40, 2 stories of stone, steel, and glass. The first time I entered as its owner, I expected to feel powerful. Instead, I felt overwhelmed. Hundreds of people worked there. Every decision affected employees, tenants, and families I would never meet. Arthur had not left me a trophy. He had left me a responsibility. I spent months learning the business. I arrived before sunrise, sat with engineers, reviewed leases, and asked questions even when I feared they sounded foolish. Some board members treated me like an unqualified housewife playing executive. I recognized the tactic. This time, it did not work. I replaced 2 directors who had secretly shared information with Northline. I promoted experienced managers Arthur trusted. I also converted 3 vacant floors into affordable offices for small businesses owned by women and first-generation entrepreneurs. On the 39th floor, I created the Arthur Vale Center for Family Independence. It offered free legal consultations, financial education, temporary office space, and counseling for people leaving controlling relationships. Rachel joined its advisory board. Daniel helped build a program that trained lawyers to recognize financial coercion. Miriam kept a framed copy of Arthur's letter in the conference room. Not the parts about Derek, just the final lines. "Trust yourself. You were never weak. Someone simply profited from making you believe you were." Lily and Noah adjusted slowly. Noah had nightmares for months. He worried that Derek would escape prison. Lily became angry whenever anyone mentioned her father. I found a good therapist who never told them what to feel. We created new routines: Friday pizza, Sunday walks in Central Park, pancakes whenever someone had a bad night. Healing did not happen in one dramatic moment. It happened in ordinary mornings when no one was afraid. One rainy evening, almost 2 years after the arrest, Lily found me standing beside the apartment window. She was 12 then. "Do you miss Dad?" she asked. I could have given her an easy answer. I chose the honest one. Sometimes I missed the person I believed he was. But that person wasn't real. My feelings were real. That is why it hurts. She thought about that. I don't want to be like him. I put my arm around her shoulders. "You are not made from his worst choices, Lily. You get to decide who you become." She leaned against me. Outside, lights came on across the city, one window at a time. The following spring, Vale Tower held a public reopening after a major renovation. We restored Arthur's original lobby, added community space, and placed a new name above the entrance: T. Val Bienal Ding. I added Bennett for Lily and Noah. Derek had treated our family name like a key to someone else's fortune. I wanted my children to understand that a name did not belong to the person who damaged it most. It belonged to everyone who carried it forward with integrity. At the ceremony, reporters asked whether owning the building made me feel that I had won. I looked up at 40, 2 stories of glass reflecting the morning sun. Then I looked at my children. Winning was never the money, I said. Winning was reaching a morning when my children, and I no longer woke up afraid. That night, after the guests left, I took Lily and Noah to the roof. The wind was cold, but the sky was clear. Manhattan stretched around us in every direction. I carried Arthur's original letter in my coat pocket. Noah asked why his great-uncle left everything to me. Because he trusted me, I said. Even when you didn't trust yourself, Lily asked. Her question stopped me. Especially then. We stood together beneath the city lights. I thought about the woman I had been on the day of the inheritance. She had rushed home holding a cake, believing money could repair a marriage that had been designed as a theft. I did not hate that woman anymore. She had survived by adapting. She had kept her children safe. And when the truth finally appeared, she had found the courage to look directly at it. My phone vibrated in my pocket. It was a notification from the prison system. Derek had submitted another request for permission to contact the children. I showed it to Lily and Noah's therapist the next morning. Together, we decided the answer would remain no. Not forever. Just until the children were old enough, prepared enough, and free enough to choose without pressure. That was another lesson I had learned. A boundary is not cruelty. Sometimes it is the door that keeps cruelty out. Years passed. The $24 million grew because I invested it carefully. Vale Bennett became more valuable, but the number mattered less to me with every year. What mattered were the people who walked through the Arthur Vale Center and found help. A nurse whose husband controlled her paycheck. A restaurant owner whose partner forged her signature. A teacher who had been told for 15 years that she was too confused to survive alone. Every time one of them returned with good news, I felt Arthur's gift moving through the world. He had given me wealth, but more importantly, he had given me evidence when I needed truth and responsibility when I needed purpose. On the 5th anniversary of the center, I received a letter from Derek. Prison officials had inspected it, and my lawyer had read it first. It contained no threat. For once, it contained no excuse. He wrote that Vanessa had stopped answering his letters. He wrote that other prisoners knew what he had done. He wrote that he finally understood he had destroyed the only family he ever had. At the bottom, he asked for forgiveness. I sat alone in Arthur's old office and read the letter twice. Then I placed it in a drawer. I did not write back. Forgiveness, I had learned, does not always mean reunion. It does not require access. It does not erase consequences. Sometimes forgiveness is simply refusing to carry another person's poison inside you. I no longer needed Derek to suffer for me to feel free. His punishment belonged to the law. My future belonged to me. That evening, I walked through the lobby as the last sunlight turned the windows gold. On the wall beside the elevators was a photograph of Arthur. He looked serious, as always. I smiled at him. "You knew?" I whispered. Of course. Arthur had not known every detail. He could not have predicted the lake house, the damaged brake line, or the exact shape of Derek's betrayal. But he knew something I had forgotten. A building can survive a storm when its foundation is strong. So can a person. I stepped outside, where Lily and Noah were waiting. They were older now, taller, and laughing about something I could not hear. The city moved around us. 5 years earlier, I had believed my inheritance was 20, $4 million in a skyscraper. I was wrong. My real inheritance was the truth, and the truth gave me back my life. Derek had planned my funeral so he could own my future. Instead, I buried the woman he taught me to be, and built a life he could never touch. The end.